welcome back to Push to Be More. I'm Sadaf Beynon, one of your hosts for this podcast, and today we've got another great conversation about what it takes to make life work. Joining me today is our special guest, Therese Gopaul-Robinson, and I'm really excited to hear about her unique life experiences, the hurdles she's had to push through, the ways she recharges her spirit, and the steps she's taking to be more. In other words, it's all about push to be more. This episode is brought to you by PodJunction, a podcast production service that helps businesses launch and grow podcasts without the stress. Now, I know a lot of you listening are leaders and entrepreneurs, and if you're curious about what podcasting can do for your business, or if you're wondering where to even start, head over to podjunction.com. We would absolutely love to help make the process clear and approachable for you. Podcasting offers a unique way to expand your reach and connect with your audience in ways you may not have considered. And honestly, it's way easier than you might think. So check out podjunction.com, see what podcasting can do for you. And now let's meet Therese. Therese Gopaul-Robinson is a leadership strategist who helps executives overcome self-doubt and lead with confidence. With 20 plus years in healthcare, she saw firsthand how a lack of confidence stifles decision-making and hinders business growth. And now she's equipping leaders with the tools to make bold decisions, inspire their teams, and drive real impact. Therese, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am fantastic. You and I were chatting right before, and I was saying it has been a day. Yeah. And it has been a day, but it's been a good day. It's just, it's one of those days where you just got to just kind of keep pushing forward. So no, I'm doing really great.
Fantastic. Fantastic. You're welcome. Yeah. So Therese, you know that I am part of PodJunction. And so the first question I like to ask is, if you had your own podcast and you invite anyone to be on your show, who would you invite and why?
I would invite Snoop Dogg.
Okay.
Yes, I know. That's a different one. Why would I invite him? Yes. If you think about somebody who has stood the test of time and evolved as they grew in their business, it's Snoop Dogg. And when you look at just kind of how he began versus where he is right now, it's an incredible journey. And there's, we see a lot in terms of what he's doing right now. I think he purchased a hockey team and he invested in all these different things. But I am very curious about the behind the scenes. How did he make those transitions? What were those conversations like? What was the work that he had to do to go from, well-known rapper to this business, mogul? I mean, like what did that look like behind the scenes? I think he's a brilliant human being, and I would love a few minutes to just tap into his brain to just really understand what that journey looked like. So that would be hands down who I'd want to talk to.
That's cool. So why is it that you are so curious about him and those particular set of questions that you've just outlined there? Why that?
Because he has figured out how to continue to be relevant. I mean, that's the bottom line. He has figured out the secret to being relevant regardless of the climate, regardless of what's happening in the environment, regardless of just anything. He has figured out that formula. And I think if the rest of us could figure out that formula, how incredible would that be? So that truly is what it is. This is a brilliant human being. And I think it's, I almost feel like I want him to teach a business class or a course or something somewhere, because I do think it's not something that just happened accidentally. It's not something that he just, said, hey, I'm Snoop Dogg, let me just continue to be relevant. It was something that was intentional. It was something that he worked really hard for. And he also, there was strategy behind it. And to me, I think that is just so intriguing. And so, again, I would love to be able to just tap into that brain, just to hear from him, what did that look like? Was he always confident? Did he know back in the 90s that this is where he wanted to be? Was this a transition that happened in response to something else? Did he have any doubts and fears? How many times was he told no? How many times did he walk into a boardroom and people have this assumption of him and who he was based on what was out there publicly? So these are all things I think would be just a wealth of knowledge and just something great, just really great information to have. And I really think that if we had access to that information, that to me is gold.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And I think I mean, I'm sure he's faced all kinds of struggles and has
Of
had to hear
course.
no, and as a lot of people do. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
what's interesting when you listen to people's stories that it's often the hardships and the challenges and the
Yeah.
struggle that helps
Yes.
them reach those new heights that they hadn't thought of before, possibly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of us, we see the end result, right?
Hmm.
We see him as the end result and we think, oh, okay, well, he obviously he has it easy, or just anyone else who, is in the spotlight. Tony Robbins, Oprah, all these people, you look at them and go, man, it must be great to be you, and you just get
Yeah.
everything just handed to you. And that's not the case. There's a journey that happens. There's a lot that, a lot of failure that happens along the way, and a lot of resilience that happens along the way. And I think a lot of these folks who we look up to or we even take for granted, they have a story to tell and they have something that they could teach all of us. And again, I really single him out specifically because I
Mm.
look at him as somebody who has not only made this incredible transition, figured out how to be relevant, but he's also probably had to face a lot of assumptions
Yeah.
about who he is as a human or as a businessman.
Hmm.
And he probably had to overcome a lot of those obstacles based on that. And I just admire him a lot.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
You're
And
welcome.
you're welcome. Yeah. And actually, you know what? I just want to extend that to you. So tell us about what challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them? Because I feel like it just kind of leads nicely into my next
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. So, like all of us, right? I've faced several challenges, but the biggest challenge I've faced really is my internal negativity, I guess, is the negative
Mm.
self talk, I guess, is the best way to say it. Throughout my career, regardless of all the promotions I received, regardless of all of the accolades, all of those things, I never quite believed that I deserved it. I
Mm.
never fully bought into that fact or that thought that I belonged where I was. And I really struggled in my leadership roles. I really struggled really in every position that I was in because I just felt like I was pretending, if that makes
Mm.
sense. I just felt like I
Mhm.
was putting on an act because I really didn't belong here. I really wasn't smart enough, and I really shouldn't be in this boardroom with all of these really incredible human beings. And so that was something that I really struggled with for, quite honestly, 20 plus years.
Mm.
I did a really good job of pretending, but to be very honest, and I talk about this sometimes when I'm on stage where, the routine for me was I would get up, I would cry all the way to work. I would park in the parking lot. I would sit there for a minute to try to gather myself. I would
Mm.
go to work. I would get back in my car and I'd cry all the way home because every day I just felt like I couldn't meet expectations and I just
Mm.
was not, I just didn't belong in those positions and I put a lot of pressure on myself. So fast forward in time, how have I overcome that?
Mm.
Well, it took a lot of self-reflection, and quite honestly, and I think it's something that we probably need to talk about more openly. I did actually seek help. I started therapy and I
Mm.
started to get to the root of some of the feelings that I was having. And there were things that we tapped into that I didn't even realize contributed to some of those thoughts I had on a daily basis
Mm.
about myself and about myself as a leader. So that was the first thing, was just recognizing that I couldn't figure this out on my own. And then the second thing was trying to figure out the easiest way, and I really mean that, the easiest, least complicated way to start building confidence. And for me, it started off with being more intentional about some of the things that I wanted to do in my life and in my career. And the second thing I did was I started to look for evidence around me that I had done it before. Because I think oftentimes when we set goals, we think, oh my gosh, these are big goals. There's no way I can do this. I'm not capable. I don't have the this, that, the other, whatever. But in fact, there's evidence all around us showing us that we can do hard things.
Mm-hmm.
So the second thing I did was started to kind of look for, examples in my life where I was able to achieve certain things, like getting my master's degree, like buying my first house, all things that felt so out there for me
Mm-hmm.
at that time. And then the last thing I did was I just started doing stuff. I just acted. I started doing little things at a time. I didn't look too far ahead, and I just kind of rinsed and repeated that. I
Mm-hmm.
was intentional. I looked around myself for evidence, and then I just started doing things. And so for me, that transition has been slow. I would be lying to you, Sadaf, if I said that I was 1,000% confident in any situation that I was in, because it is a process and it is something that I continuously work at. I do believe that confidence is a skill. It is
Mm-hmm.
not something that we're born with, and it is also something that we have to continuously work on, just like any other muscle, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't just work out, get the big biceps, and then like be done. We have to maintain that, and so there's certain things we have to continuously do to maintain that confidence muscle. And so for me, it's just continuously trying to remember that I've accomplished things, remember that I can do hard things, and just get up every single day and try. That's
Mm-hmm.
really it at the end of the day, trying.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, you said you sought help. You were you reflected on it and you realized you needed help. So
Yes.
what was that process like? Because I think sometimes it's hard for people to come to that point of actually, I need help with this. I can't do this. It's bigger than me.
Yeah. I realized it when my younger daughter,
Mm,
Zara,
mm,
made a comment to me in passing. It was very innocent too. She was probably maybe like 5 years old at the time, a little
mm.
one at the
Oh,
time.
what?
And yeah, and she just said, mommy, are you happy? Like, I just want you to be okay. And we were just
Mm,
doing something, and she made that comment, like, I just want you
mm,
to be happy. I just want you to smile. I want you to be okay. And I realized that although I thought I was doing a really good job of, hiding all of the negative things I was feeling and my deep sadness.
mm,
In fact, I really wasn't. And I was kind of going through the motions, but my kids saw and knew that something was wrong. And the most important thing to me on this planet is to be a good mom and to really set a good table for my daughters. And it made me so sad to think that this little 5-year-old kid was worried about me being happy. And that hurt me so much. And that was when I realized that it's not fair to her.
mm,
I said that I want to give my kids more and be better for my kids, but I wasn't doing it.
mm,
And so that was really the first time that I said, okay, this is not working. This is not working. Getting up and being mom and making lunches and dropping them off and helping them with homework and smiling and laughing and then going in the bathroom and crying, it's not working. And so that was really the first step for me. And I went and I did not want to go. It was, I mean, going to therapy the very first time, it's like the most uncomfortable experience, at least for me anyhow.
mm,
And also because on some level I was just like, well, do I even really need it? Like, am I overreacting? Maybe I can't, I was trying to justify it in my head. And the very first session I had, I joke about it now, but I say to myself, that was the easiest money that woman ever earned in her life, because I sat in her office and she said, so Therese, what brings you? And I just cried for about 30 minutes, and she did nothing and said nothing.
mm,
And, but clearly that meant that, there were things happening that I needed to resolve. And so that was really how I got started. So, I mean, I'd love to tell you that I just woke up one day and said, I'm going to take control of my life, but that's not what happened. What happened is my 5-year-old was worried about my level of joy. She was worried about me being happy.
Mm.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, that gets me a little emotional talking about that. But yeah, so that was really the first step for me, because the bottom line is everything you do, people are watching. Whether it's your coworkers, your friends, your children, everything you do, people are paying attention. And you may think that you're doing well and you've got the persona down of I've got it together. But the reality is that people are paying attention, and these little ones are looking to you for guidance. And so what I was teaching my kids was that it was not, it was okay to be unhappy. It was okay to, not figure out how to be a stronger human. And it was okay to kind of just have these negative thoughts about yourself. And that's certainly not something I wanted for them.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. I mean, it makes me think out of the mouths of babes, right? So for a 5-year-old to push you to make such bold decisions and choices to help you out of that mess you were in. And also what you're saying is that, how they're watching all the time. There's always someone watching. And what's interesting is that each person is interpreting what they're seeing in a different way. So what your daughters would have been seeing was that, it's okay to be like this. It's okay to, it's okay to be struggling and feeling burdened. Someone else might be watching and thinking, oh, wow, she's got it all together, because you could curate the perfect picture, right? Like, but inside you're really struggling.
And the thing is, too, Sadaf, is more of us go through those private struggles than we realize. And that's why I think it's really important to talk about these things in any setting, whether we're talking about our careers, we're talking about, pushing to be more. It's important that we normalize having these types of conversations, because we all have our own personal, struggles and challenges and obstacles, or whatever word you want to call it. And so it's important that we talk about that stuff as well as we try to grow, as we try to start our businesses or become dynamic leaders or be better spouses, or whatever your thing is, whatever it is that you're trying to, to do more of or be better at. It's important that we acknowledge that, we all have real things going on, and it's okay to talk about those real things in a very constructive way that can really help others and help ourselves at the same time.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think, life is messy, isn't it? It's just not perfect for anybody. And, as you say, like talking about it and processing things out loud and getting people's input, trusted people, is really important.
For sure.
Yeah. And is this part of what you do for your role as well? Because in the bio that we had is that you equip leaders with the tools to make bold decisions, inspire their teams, and drive real impact. Is this around a similar kind of strand?
Yep. Absolutely. Yes, 1,000%. And so, oh my gosh, I love working with leaders who they have good intentions and they want to do well. And this is exactly what I do with the people that I work with and the organizations that I work with, because the reality is this, and this is not a Therese. I'm not just like kind of throwing numbers out and making things up. There's a lot of research being done on confidence and leadership. And statistically speaking, 78% of leaders right now in this country alone, in the US alone, 78% of leaders are struggling with lack of confidence. 78%.
That's huge.
I mean, that's most of us, right? And that's just the ones who admitted it, right? So I'm willing to bet it's more. And so, what I try to do with organizations, number one, is I try to show leaders of organizations that we have to stop looking at things like self-confidence, or maybe you've heard the term imposter phenomenon. We have to stop looking at these things as personal problems, because they're not. These are problems that have the power to impact everyone else in the organization, because from a statistical standpoint, if a leader is struggling with confidence, they're going to struggle with having tough conversations. They're going to struggle with being innovative. They're going to struggle with holding people accountable. There's all these things that they're going to struggle with. And guess what? All of those things do what? They impact the business, right? Because if you don't have a cohesive, innovative team that are meeting or exceeding goals, or meeting or exceeding quality, then the organization is going to struggle. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And so what I do with organizations and with leaders is I try to get them to tap into that. And so we do that in a lot of different ways, a lot of fun ways. But the bottom line is I try to get the leadership team to get to the root of why they're having some of these internal, self-confidence, issues or struggles. And then from that point on, we start to build. And so a lot of what I said earlier when I said, because you asked, how did you make that transition? And so really, I created this based on what I had to do for myself.
Your own experience.
And it worked. Yeah. And that was really being intentional, looking for evidence, and then acting on it. And that was it. It's a very simple way to do that. And what we do is we basically apply that methodology to all of the things, not all of the things, but the top, 3 to 5 things that leaders are accountable for within every organization. And we just kind of rinse and repeat that. So that is where I spend all of my time, is working with leaders on building confidence in leadership, but more importantly, trying to show leaders of organizations, executive leaders of organizations, those decision makers, trying to show them the connection.
Right.
Because oftentimes they can't see it. So I have to show them that connection. And once they see that connection, they go, oh my gosh, how quickly can you get here? and then it works. I had a client, really short story. I had a client who I had been working with them for a year, and she is the COO of an organization, and all of her departments are struggling. And just to keep a story really short, basically at the end of it, they hired me to do something else. They wanted to, their client satisfaction scores were decreasing every single day, really high turnover, low engagement scores, all these things, right? Productivity, quality, just everything was just not going well. And so they brought me in because they're like, we need you to help these teams. Like, they need to get it together. And after the first day, I quickly determined that a big part of this issue is the lack of confidence in 2 of their executive leaders. And we had a really tough conversation about it, started working the model, the plan. And what is so cool is I had a call with them in January, earlier this month. And she said to me, Therese, I got to tell you something. And she said, I've been applying everything and we're doing all the things and I'm excited because this is happening, that's happening. And then she said, but I got to tell you this really, really cool thing. In January of 2024, she said their audit scores were averaging right at about 16%. That's 16% out of 100. Okay, that's like an F minus, right? And I mean, I don't even know if it's an F. It might be lower than an F. But the average scores, audit scores, 16%. And then she said, as of January 2025, the average audit scores were 82%.
Wow.
So anytime someone says to me, confidence is a personal thing, I say, well, I'm going to call you a liar because it's not true. That is an example of applying certain things to helping leaders build confidence so that they can do these things and be more productive and grow their teams and have more cohesive teams so that you can get these kinds of results. 16% to 82% in the space of 12 months is crazy. but it can be done. It
Yeah.
absolutely can be done.
So, question: if a
Yeah.
business is hiring someone, looking to
Yes.
hire someone, and the particular role needs a level of confidence before they arrive into it, how do they figure out what kind of confidence the person should already walk into the door with? Do you see what
Hmm.
I'm trying to say? Because
Yeah.
they might lose confidence once they're in the role because of imposter syndrome.
Hmm. Hmm.
But how much of that is the business's issue, and how much of that is a personal thing? Because is there it can't I guess what I'm trying to say, like, is there a personal aspect of it as well?
Yeah, so there's absolutely a personal aspect of it for sure, right? Because Therese walks into the organization, there's a really good chance that I'm walking into that organization with, some of my old baggage, if you may,
Mhm.
where I'm already having some, hesitancy and things like that. And so what I try to tell organizations is, yes, there is a degree of this that is personal for sure, because we're human beings, and this
Mhm.
stuff is human, right? This is personal stuff. We are leading humans. And so it's important that we understand that. However, the way that we can determine that is we have to really make sure that these competencies, so, every organization has leadership competencies, for
Mhm.
example, right? Every leader should be able to do these 10 things, whatever they are. And so what I work with executive leaders on is making sure that those leadership competencies, those things that drive success within the organization, all have some undertone of
Mhm.
confidence in it, right?
Right.
So some of the things would be things like, okay, are we able to lead through uncertain times? What does that look like?
Mhm.
How are you fostering innovation? What are the things that you're doing to drive employee engagement? How are you connecting to your busy teams? How are you holding other people accountable? Now, on the surface, it might feel like, well, that's not really confidence, but it
Mm.
actually is, because let me put it to you this way, Sadaf. Have you ever had a tough conversation with somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, how did that go? How did you feel? Think about one of the toughest conversations you had, like when you were approaching that conversation.
Um, really nervous about which way it could go,
Uh huh. And what did you do to prepare?
or how it
What
would
did
be
you?
received, rather.
Yes. So you were nervous about how it would go. You were nervous about how it would be received. So what did you do before having that conversation?
Psych myself up. No, I think for me, it's like making sure I've got all my facts straight. I know exactly
Right.
what I want to say, what I need to say, what needs to be communicated, and what doesn't need to be communicated.
Right. And so all of those are the things that you can do to build your confidence walking into that conversation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So if you were the leader that I was working with, I would do exactly that. I would say, okay, let's come up with a plan. What are the things that you want to say? What are the things, first of all, is this important?
Yeah.
Do we need to have this conversation right now? That's the first thing.
Hmm.
Is it important enough? Do we need to have this conversation right now? And if you say yes to us, yes, 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 I need to do this, then I say, okay, well, let's put together a plan for that conversation, right?
Hmm.
And then you need to actually have the courage to actually do the thing. Now, if the other person on the end, you have to, we are somewhere along the line, sometimes we forget that we're working with people.
Hmm.
And so we have to remember that there's a whole other human on the other side of this conversation. And it's a human that we want to maintain a relationship with at the end of the day. And I say that, and people might say, well, I don't know. I kind of want to terminate them. So I don't know that I want to maintain a relationship. And I would say that's not true. You want to maintain it. You want to maintain a relationship with the other person on the end of that conversation, regardless of what that conversation is about. Even if it's a termination, believe it or not, you can terminate somebody and walk away maintaining that relationship if you
Hmm.
know how to do it. And so when we look at the competencies for leaders, we want to make sure that the competencies, the skills, the leadership competencies, whatever you want to call it, whatever those things are that we're saying, this is what my leadership team must demonstrate. all of those things really should have this kind of undertone of confidence. Can you take risks? Are you afraid of change? Can you make fast, good decisions and feel confident in those decisions? Do you hesitate? Do you second guess? Can you go against the grain? These are all the things that require a level of confidence in your leader that many leaders don't have. And so when we look at all the industries right now, we're seeing this, just incredible influx of things like layoffs. We're seeing organizations that, are kind of flat or in the red. We're seeing all of these things. But when you peel back those layers, and this is what I tell organizations every single time, I don't care what the problem is. Clients aren't happy. Employees are turning over. Whatever your story is, every single time you give me a problem, I promise you I can follow the breadcrumbs and it's always going to lead me to your leadership team 100% of the time. And if I sit down and have a conversation with them, I'm willing to bet that there's something in there that they're struggling with. And that's why we're seeing some of these things happening. It's a domino
effect of that.
Absolutely. 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 Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a very interesting topic. And
it is.
And it's really incredible to see when people start to build their confidence and feel good about what they're doing and secure. It's incredible what happens, the shift that happens and the boost in the culture within that organization. Even that same leader that I just mentioned earlier, she said, Therese, we decided to do an off-site team building activity. We've never done one because we can barely get people to participate when we do stuff in-house. And she was like, we did an off-site, and she said 95% of the people who RSVP that said they were coming, they all showed up. And she said we actually had to kick people out at the end.
Wow.
They did not want to leave. And that's because she, as a new confident leader, she set the tone for the entire team. And she showed them that she was confident enough in her ability to lead them and train them that she believed in their ability to achieve really great things. She set that tone. And now everybody is being just more collaborative, more engaging. They all have ownership now. It's just a really cool thing to see that happens. And it really just starts off with you building confidence in yourself as a leader. That's where it starts. You set the tone. You lead by example, period.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting what you're talking. It's fascinating, actually, what you're saying. And as you were saying just now about setting the tone, it made me think of, it's the same in a home. It's
Yes.
It's the tone that the parents set, the dad, the mom, and then it filters down. And that's, as we were saying before, it has a knock-on effect on the rest of the family and how you are able to perform and do whatever needs doing. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And because you can just take the same model and just put it in so many different environments.
Scenarios. Exactly. And that's what's just so important is that we have to recognize that although, to your point, yes, I came into the organization, I had my confidence issues. It does impact everybody else. And you also said something earlier where you mentioned, it might display itself in different ways, right? One person would read it as this, another person would read it as this. And research has shown that people, especially leaders who are lacking confidence, they're normally referred to as micromanagers. Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever worked with a micromanager? They are distant. They are disconnected, all of these things. But what we don't realize is, that micromanagement stuff that's happening, it's not because of you, that person who's reporting to the leader. It's because of the leader. The leader does not have confidence in their ability to train you and teach you. And so that's why there's this micromanaging happening. Sadaf, I have to make sure. Did you do that thing? Did you get that thing done? Let me look at it. Okay, wait, let me see. Don't send anything until I look at it. Because of the fact that I am not confident enough in the fact that I trained you, Sadaf, enough to be independent. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of making any mistakes. fear is a big part of this as well. And if we are afraid of these things, then it's going to be really hard to be creative, innovative, and take risks. I mean, that's just the bottom line if we have all this fear around us. So there's a lot of fear going on, especially now in this climate, especially now in all of these different industries with layoffs and things happening. And so now more than ever, there's a significant need for leaders to build their confidence, to grow their teams, even in hard financial times and in uncertain times.
Yeah. Fear can be really debilitating, can't it?
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. I've been there, done that several times, several times. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's, and it's unfortunate because most people they have those underlying fears. Yeah.
Therese, I'm curious, what helped you put yourself out there and establish credibility in this space?
So, well, this is yet another story that I really wish I could say to you, Sadaf, I woke up one morning and realized I had this message to share with the world. And that's just not true. What happened for me was in 2021, I was working for an organization. And after a few years of just really hitting the targets and doing all the things that I should have been doing in that role, we'd been talking about a promotion for a while. And there was a call scheduled to do a deep dive kind of review of the ins and outs of a potential promotion, what that would look like, and so on. And got on that call, was really excited, nervous, but excited because we were finally like deep dive. Like, we're going to talk through it and kind of make a plan. And on that promotion call, I was actually fired.
Oh, wow.
So talk about a boost to your confidence, right? That's not what happened. But yeah, so I was terminated on the same day that I was actually asking for a promotion and supposed to be having a promotion conversation. And so, what happened for me after that was a lot of sadness, a lot of fear. And the worst part of all of that was at that time being terminated in the way that I was during the time that I was, again, in the midst of having a promotion conversation. What happened in that moment was all the negative things I thought about myself at that time. I felt like that termination confirmed it. It really just said to me, see, I knew it. I knew it. I knew I didn't belong here. I knew I didn't deserve to ask for that promotion. So what happened after that was just a lot of sadness, a lot of fear, a lot of just not knowing what to do next. And again, I would love to say to you that I just got up one day and said, I'm going to believe in myself, and this is going to be a new day for me. And that's not what happened. Really, what happened was I had a really great support system. And my husband was a huge part of that because, he really looked at me one Sunday. I'll never forget. It was a Sunday morning. We were having coffee and he said, we need to have a conversation. And I thought to myself, that can't be good. And he just said, Therese, you've been talking about pursuing all of these big things and these dreams. And you always said, man, if I ever had a chance, I'd love to do these things. And he said, I think this is your chance. If you don't realize, I think the chance is now. And so that was the first step for me in figuring out what, business would look like, figuring out what my message might be. But it started off, and this is something else I tell people all of the time, if you don't believe in yourself right now, that's okay. But you need to find someone who does believe in you and borrow their belief in you just for a little while. And so that's what I did. I borrowed his belief in me. And that was really what started all of it. And it was messy. It was icky. I was all over the place. I had no strategy. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do. But what I did know was I didn't want other people to feel the way that I'd been feeling for so long. That I knew. And that was really kind of what started off for me in building this whole thing out. And now I do a lot of consulting work with organizations, but primarily I'm a professional speaker, and I speak about this in all of the different areas of this topic with organizations. But that's really how it started. It started because I was at one of the lowest points in my life, and there was someone who believed in me, and I borrowed that belief. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning. And then many, many no's and many, many mistakes later, here I am. And I'm still around, still here.
No, that's fantastic. That's a great story. And I love how you talk about you borrowed his belief in you. I think that's a really good point. And I think we all come to a point in our lives where we need that. We need to just see ourselves through someone else's eyes. And
Yes.
Yeah.
And, and again, if you can put that, like you said, you can take that concept and you can apply that at home. You can apply that at work, right? Because the person whose belief you're going to borrow is your leader, your mentor, your coach, or whatever you want to call them. That's what you're doing, right? Because there's a leader who's looking at you and saying, Sadaf, I know you can do this. I'm going to trust you to do it. And I'm here. I'm here if you need me, but go for it. Like, it's okay. You can do that. And so, it can be applied in any situation, in any aspect of your life, for sure. And that's what I do. I say, hey, look, if you have nobody else, I'm here. I believe in you. I'll let you borrow some of this.
Yeah.
I have some of my belief in you, but I need it back for later. But yes, I think it's really important that we all have that. And, there's a lot of studies out there that talk about that. And I don't want to get into the studies because some of it is controversial. But the bottom line is this. Oftentimes when someone else believes that we can do something, it pushes us to strive for more. It really does.
Especially if that person is someone that you really trust.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been very lucky to have a good community of people like that around me, even in this side of what I do now. And even though I will definitely say my level of confidence is significantly higher than it was 3 years ago, there are still times, let me tell you, there are still times where I wake up and I go, why am I even trying to do this? There's no way. There are all these people out there. They're so much better than me.
Yeah.
And they might be better than me in certain areas, but I just have to continue doing. And I think that's the thing too, is sometimes people misunderstand what confidence is. People think confidence means I just can do it. I have no fear. This is going to be great. And that's not what confidence is, at least not in my opinion. Confidence is the ability to try.
Yeah.
That's it. See, trying requires nothing. It doesn't require skill. It doesn't require certificates. It doesn't require accolades. It just requires you to get up and do. That's it. And in doing and realizing that you can accomplish small things and you can do hard things, then your confidence starts to build. And now you're wanting to try harder things and bigger things. And now you see, and then it's just like it's a little process. It takes time, but confidence really is just, if you only had 5 seconds to post what we need to say on this podcast, you'll say confidence is trying. That's it.
In a nutshell.
That's it.
Love it. Love it. So Therese, you've built quite a unique framework then that helps leaders step into their confidence within their teams. As you've grown your business then, how have you expanded your own reach and built authority in this space?
So what's so interesting about this is I have really started to work with organizations that are primarily male dominant or industries that are male dominant. And I never really thought about it that way until recently. I didn't think that, I kind of knew, but I didn't realize the need for this level of coaching amongst leaders who are working in male dominated in male dominant industries. So, for example, agriculture. So this is an industry that a year or two ago, I knew nothing about. I come from healthcare. And, but what I've been able to do is work with a lot of these industries and organizations within these industries to help build a confidence amongst their women in leadership. And what is really interesting about that, Sadaf, is that initially, I was called into these organizations to talk to the women in their leadership teams to help them build confidence. But what happened, which was really kind of cool, was a lot of the male leaders said, my gosh, like everything you're saying, it resonates with me. And, people tend to think sometimes that us as men in the workplace, like, we don't have fear. We don't struggle with some of these things. And the reality is that we struggle with a lot of the same things. And so for me, in terms of reach, my message is not specific to anyone anymore, because what I'm realizing is regardless of gender, identifying gender, regardless of industry, regardless of position, we are all dealing with very similar feelings in terms of our confidence. And so obviously I work with a lot of organizations in terms of consulting, but I present a lot of my programs on bigger stages and bigger platforms. And I do a lot of, I try to meet people where they're at in terms of how they can consume the information that I have. And so whether it's on a bigger stage or if it's more of a, hey, I just want a checklist. I just want to, I'm ready to have a difficult conversation. What are the things that I should do as I prepare for that? These are resources that I try to provide for people. If they just come to my website, they can grab that stuff. So there's a lot of different things. I'm doing a lot of volunteer work with some organizations that are trying to help their emerging leaders. I'm also doing a lot of work in healthcare as well for physicians, because physicians, that's another population that we assume don't need this kind of support when they probably need it the most. And so I do a lot of work with physicians who are transitioning over into leadership roles. A lot of physicians get leadership roles because of longevity, because of clinical skill and so on, but they've not really gotten the training and development that they need to be effective, strong, confident leaders. And so I do a lot of work with physician associations and medical associations and things like that as well. So I do a lot of different things. And the bottom line, though, is that the message is always the same. The message is always the same, regardless of who I'm speaking to. Yeah.
Interesting. And you're kind of going back into the healthcare industry too with the physicians again, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. My heart is in healthcare. That's where I grew up. My entire career was in the healthcare space. And so I will never leave that industry. It's what I know. But what I've realized is just this message just resonates with anybody, regardless of the industry. And there's just definitely a need for it more and more and more. And again, my mission is to show people that confidence, self-confidence it's no longer a personal thing. It can't be. It absolutely cannot be, because it is impacting everyone and everything around us. And therefore, we have to all have some level of ownership over what that looks like within our organizations.
Therese, tell me, looking back, what's one thing you wish you had done sooner when it comes to establishing yourself as a thought leader?
I was just thinking about this yesterday. Yeah, I really was. I was thinking about this yesterday. So we're in the beginning of 2025. I got fired in the beginning of 2021. And as you know, I made that decision after having that conversation with my husband to start my business. And I wish I was braver back in 2021. I wish I was braver, because I don't like to use the term wasted time, but I will for this moment. I wasted a lot of time worrying about what other people would think of me starting my own business. I wasted a lot of time worrying about that. And as a result of that, I didn't go after certain projects or organizations that I wanted to, because I didn't think that they would want to work with me. And I mean, who am I, right? Who am I to decide that I'm an expert in something. I wish I was braver. I wish I was brave enough to try. And I would say for the first 2 years, although I was pretty successful. My success really came because the people around me who had worked with me previously loved the work that I did. They tapped me on the shoulder and said, can you come in and work with us? But I wasn't brave enough to go after the people who didn't know me. And so I wish if I could go back, I wish I was braver. Yeah. But that's okay because now I can share that.
Yeah.
I can share that with people to say, it's okay to be brave. It's okay to try that thing. It's okay to not feel that you are equipped to tackle whatever that thing is and still go after it. You can still go after it because you'll figure it out. You're smart enough. You're capable enough. You can do it. So that's one thing I would change, but I'm okay with it because I think there were a lot of lessons I learned along the way, and it's a lot of things that I can teach other people now. Yeah. But yes, absolutely. I wish I was braver. I'm braver now, but I'm not as brave as I'd like to be. And so that's one of actually my commitments for 2025 is becoming outrageously courageous.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it was that fear piece that was kind of, stopping you from being more brave.
Right? Yeah. It's that theme. Yeah. It's a theme that I've kind of carried for my entire life, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I don't think you're alone in that at all. And I think what's really cool about your story and what you do is that you said too that you've used your own experience of being intentional and being intentional and
looking for the evidence, looking for proof around, and then acting on it.
Exactly.
Actually doing the thing that will build momentum. I actually call that security stacking.
Okay.
So that's a term that I use. And when you just visualize that, it's really stacking your securities. It is, finding evidence all around you to build that strength. And you do that by security stacking. So I actually call that security stacking, where we continuously are finding evidence. We are continuously being intentional and we're continuously acting. All of that's just going to build momentum.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it's a process that you keep, as you said, rinse and repeat, right? Yeah. Right. And I think what's cool is that you're able to, because you've gone through it yourself, you're being able to teach that to other people, and it can resonate so well, can't it? Because you're talking from your own experience.
Yes. And I've worked with so many people at this point that now I don't even talk about myself anymore. When I share examples, now I just share their wins and their stories, because there's so many of them. And, and I'm just so proud of that. And I'm very humbled by it as well. It's so funny, even now years later, and my clients they just make fun of me because I get so emotional over it when I see them being successful. And they're like, oh my gosh, Therese. And it's like, because I'm just so proud, because, all that's going to do, again, it's setting the tone. And so there are these emerging leaders that are coming up behind us. There are brand new employees coming in through the door. And how cool is that for you to be this example of what confidence looks like and what you can achieve, when you are that confident as a leader. It just gets me so, I love it. And it makes me just excited every day to get up and do the work that I do, for sure. I love it.
That's awesome.
Really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. Therese, I'm really conscious of time. So we'll move on. How do people reach you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name. I'm sure you're going to put it in the show notes somewhere, but it's Therese Gopaul-Robinson, and I'm on LinkedIn. I live primarily there. I'm on Instagram as well, at Therese_Gopaul-Robinson. But all that said, you can just jump on my website. It's theresegr.com, and that's ThereseGr.com. And there you can connect with me in several different ways. So those are the three primary ways that you can reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you for that. We will be sure to put that into the show notes.
Awesome.
Great. Therese, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real privilege to talk to you.
Oh no, thank you. And you're doing some really great stuff here, Sadaf. And I'm really proud of you. And I'm just really thrilled that you invited me to be on this show. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Right.
It means
No,
a lot.
thank you. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap on another great conversation. A massive thanks to Therese for joining us and sharing a part of her journey. For transcript or show notes, do swing by our website, pushtobemore.com. And a big thanks to today's sponsor, PodJunction, for all you change makers out there contemplating podcasting as your new vehicle of expression and connection. Definitely connect with us at podjunction.com. And now don't forget to follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, because we've got more conversations coming up and we don't want you to miss any of them. So from Therese and from me, thanks for joining in. Have an awesome week and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.